Hi, everyone, and welcome to this Talking Insomnia episode in which we have a guest from Australia. Tash, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey.
How are you today?
Yeah, good, thanks.
All right. So, yeah, you and I have interacted some over the channel. I think you left a couple of comments and whatnot, but just tell the story of like what's been happening, and we'll see how hopefully I can share some thoughts that will be helpful.
Cool. Well, roughly about a year ago, in about July, I started having problems sleeping. Um, I know what started it because it was like a couple of stressful events. And then after like watching a lot of podcasts and doing some research, I know what's perpetuated it, which is the stress as well. Um, so once the stressful event went away, then it just continued because I'm like, why can't I sleep? And then I was searching for things to fix it, and none of those things worked. So I understand all of that. But then as I've eliminated all those things over the course of nearly a year, it seems to get better, but then it regresses even without having stress or without thinking of it or anything. And so I can't figure out um, why it's still continuing.
Mm-hmm. I totally get it. And it wasn't like you were in a particular program, but you educated yourself. You talk about like perpetuating factors, etc. So you learned
Yeah,
this you kind of educated yourself, it sounds like.
yeah, yeah. Just from Googling and just from watching your podcasts and
Mm-hmm.
watching Martin Reed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so all of those things are completely true. Uh, but then um, when I let go of all of those things and I'm not thinking about it to the point of almost being like a zombie, just not thinking about it, busying myself, doing other things, not focusing on it, not Googling it, none of those things, it seems to like have no pattern. There's absolutely no pattern to go by where you could go, aha, this is the reason why, you're thinking of this too much, or you're focusing on this too much, or this is a sleep habit. There's nothing there. There's like absolutely nothing there. And it could be that I'll have a really stressful day and I'll sleep beautifully. What's with that? And then it could be that another day, um, you know, something else happened. There's just no formula. There's no
Mm-hmm.
formula.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And going back, like, let's say before July of last year, you were sleeping well.
Yeah, yeah, I had no problems at all.
That's great. Very, very good. Okay. And so, let's talk about what's happening now. So it's unpredictable, meaning you can have a
Yeah.
stretch of nights when you sleep pretty good and then stretch, or is it like, do you go stretches of time where you sleep well, or it's kind of more ongoing
Yeah,
trouble sleeping?
yeah, the stretches of sleep would be um, 5 hours of broken sleep is the best I've ever done.
Hmm.
That's a good night. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so it's not actually great, but it's amazing for someone like me.
Hmm. You said that, sometimes you can have a stressful day and then you still sleep well.
Yeah.
By that, you
So that's
mean,
what
oh, sorry to interrupt, but by that you mean like what you said, like 5 hours of broken sleep is good.
Yes, that's the best I've ever had
Mm.
in the course of the year. And it's like I'll go to sleep for an hour or two, wake up at the same time, go and sit on the couch, do all of those things, go back to bed, and then sleep for 2.5 hours or 3 hours. I've never ever slept for 5 hours straight or 3 hours straight. It's always interrupted.
And let's go back again, actually, to before this all started happening. Uh, what were your habits like? What time would you go to bed, and what time did you go wake up, etc.?
Yeah, I would get up at probably about 6 and I would go to bed about anywhere between 10 and 11. Never thought about it, never
Mm-hmm,
gave it a
mm-hmm.
second thought and had no
Exactly.
problems. I mean, you'd have the odd weird random night, but nothing to this extent.
Got it. And um, and what are you doing now?
Like to help the situation.
Oh no, I meant more like what time do you go to bed?
Oh, yep, sorry. Yeah, so I go to bed now at about 11, 11:30, anytime between 10:30 and 11:30. I
Mm-hmm.
just go when I'm feeling tired.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wake up every morning at the same time, 5:30. But my body would wake me up probably at 4, 3, 4:30. I never make it to 5:30, but my alarm always goes off at 5:30. Um, I did the whole horrible regimented staying up until 12:30, 1 o'clock, which was just torturous. Um, and yeah, it kind of helped for a little bit, but it was never consistent. As I said, it was always regressing for no
Mm-hmm.
reason. So I could be doing really great for 3 nights, and then 2 nights, 2 weeks would be 0 to 2 hours sleep, like really bad, to the point where I ended up hallucinating. Um, yeah, it was just so, so bad. And I couldn't function during the day.
Hmm. I see. So now you kind of keeping yourself up till about 11. You have an alarm set for
Mm.
5:30, right?
Yeah,
And for how long have you been doing some version of like spending less time in bed?
nearly a year.
Exactly. Okay.
It's a year in July. We're nearly in July, which is
Okay.
insane.
I see. And during the course of at what point, so about a year ago you started tuning into uh, my channel, Martin's channel, you read up, etc., and you were thinking, okay, I need to spend less time in bed. And
Yeah.
at what point were you like, this doesn't seem to be helpful?
Well, it did help because in the very beginning, I was getting like no sleep, or someone would say, "Oh, you must be getting some sleep," which is not what you want to hear when you don't feel like you're getting any sleep. But
Mm-hmm.
I was getting no sleep for such a long time. To get 3 hours sleep was feeling like, oh, okay, I'm slowly improving. I was trying to look at positives. So anything was better than getting no sleep or 1 hour sleep. So to get 2 hours sleep or 3 hours sleep felt like an improvement, even though it was insanely slow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I did ask other people, and they suggested to me to make my sleep window more rigorous by going to bed like 1 or 2 in the morning, which was insane. And I did try that, and that didn't change. Um, I've tried everything, but nothing's
Mm-hmm.
consistently made a change. And then hearing people's advice saying, you'll build your sleep confidence. Well, I will have sleep confidence when I've slept the 5 hours for 3 nights, but then I can get slaughtered with an entire 2 weeks of sleeping 0 to 2 hours. And I'm not stressed. I'm not thinking about it. I'm super busy. I I can't understand what is driving it. I don't have is it the hyperarousal? What is it that's still driving it? I feel like I'm kind of the out of the box person. No one else is kind of having this similar thing happening. I can't pinpoint what it is.
I hear it. I hear it. And you have I'm guessing you have had thoughts about what could be the culprit here.
Well, I could honestly say from everything I've heard you say and other people say, in the beginning, I was full blown hyperarousal, full blown trying to control everything. And right, you're telling me that this is what the problem is. I'm going to go and do it 10 times more than what you've said. I'm going to really nip this in the bud. You know what I mean?
Yes,
And
yes.
so I've been really committed to everything that everyone said, to the point where I would stay up later. I've done everything, exhausting myself on doing all of those things, and then also exhausting myself on not doing anything. But nothing seems to consistently work, to the point of like just sitting here like a zombie on the couch every night. And when people suggest to do something enjoyable, there's nothing enjoyable if you have full blown insomnia, like full blown insomnia where you're sleeping 0 to 2 hours. There's nothing enjoyable about getting up in the middle of the night, freezing cold night, and sitting somewhere. Like the last thing you want to do is read a book. That's what someone says when they're maybe getting 5, 6 hours of sleep and it's a little bit, inconvenient. But when you're
Mhm.
having like no sleep at all or very little sleep, the last thing you want to do is a puzzle or read a book. Do you know what I mean? So I'll
Yes.
just sit there on the couch because I'm so physically exhausted. I
Mm-hmm.
can't, like, do you know what I mean? Like, I can't even read a book because your eyes get blurry because you're that tired,
Mm.
to the point where you would hallucinate, which is quite frightening. I've never had anything like that happen before. Um, so yeah, I just cannot pinpoint what it is.
Exactly. All right. And now, you're what are your obligations during the day? You're working, I think you mentioned.
Yeah, I have three kids. I'm a homeschool mum, so
Mm-hmm.
it's the worst thing on the face of the planet. There's so many responsibilities I have. I mean, as any mum knows,
Mm-hmm.
you are needed. I'm needed to take people to soccer. I'm needed to take people to activities at night time. So there are serious safety implications about me not sleeping very much, genuinely. So I'm happy to push through the day, and I do that 90% of the time. But there are just some times where I cannot do it, and it's actually unsafe for me to drive. And there's no one else who can relieve me of these duties. They're my duties. So I kind of have to get this sorted out. Yes, that's a huge pressure, but it's a pressure that's never going to go away. It's not something that can be relieved. Um, so yeah, that doesn't help, but I don't like dwell on it during the day. I just keep going as best as I can. But it's not an enjoyable life when you miss out on a birthday party, or not because you're being a crybaby or a sook, it's because you really feel sick, like you're really struggling because you've had no sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we had our 15th anniversary, and I felt absolute rubbish. I could hardly even talk because I was just like 3, 4 straight nights of having 0 to 2 hours of sleep. And I'm just like, really? Nothing perpetuated this. Why is this happening at the worst possible time? But I still went out and I still did everything I had to do, but it wasn't really enjoyable. And that's horrible. It's really horrible.
Yeah, yeah. Got it. And okay, so I'm sure that it might not be something as a typical night, but you mentioned, you go to bed at 11,
Yeah.
and then, what happens?
Um, Most of the time I'll fall asleep. It's totally fine. I'll go to sleep. I'll wake up 90% of the time, 1 hour or 2 hours after going to sleep religiously. I'll get up, go to the toilet, go to the couch, and sit there and listen to like an audio book for a short period of time, and then try to go back to bed. And most of the time that will work, and I'll go back to bed for another 2 hours and then wake up again. Um, or on a bad night, the second half of the night, I just won't sleep. I just will not sleep. It just doesn't matter what happens. You go back to the couch 50,000 times. I just won't sleep. So that will end up being roughly like 1 to 2 hours of sleep on that night, which is just added up over 1 to 2 weeks. It really takes its toll on you.
Hmm. And do what makes you decide, like, okay, I'm gonna get out of bed?
Just the fact that I've been lying there for such a long time.
Mm.
I don't really feel stressed. I've kind of just gotten over it. It's more just like a chore. It's like I hate going to the lounge room. As I said, like, when people suggest going and doing an enjoyable activity, when it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you don't want to go to the lounge room or anywhere because you're just so tired. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
But I do it, and I have got my mind set into, like, I have to do this, and I'm not stressed about it. I don't feel stressed in my bed at all. Um, but yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't want to live like this anymore. It would be better if I was really stressed out, because then I could say, aha, that's
That's
what it
it.
is.
Exactly.
Stop stressing out. But it's not that. It's like I'm a zombie going from one room to the other, doing what you're supposed to be doing, but it's just sometimes it works. Yay. Sometimes it doesn't work, and I just cannot understand what on earth it is.
Mm. And when you say sometimes it works, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, on the ratio of a week of 7 days, you could have 4 random days where I will follow that kind of thing of hopping out of bed, and then going back to bed, and whatever, and it's completely fine. And
Hmm.
then any other time, it's just not. But nothing's changed in the day. There's been no stressful event. I've not been focusing on it. I've been just going about my day as normal. and just boom, out of nowhere, hello, no sleep tonight for you. It's like, really? Come on. And so, yes, you have to be inhuman not to question that and go, what is it? Like, what is it? Because I don't want to go for a second year of this, like a
Yeah, yeah.
second Christmas, a second this, that. Like in photos, I can see my face is just trying to be a strong person, but it's horrible. Like I do push through, but sometimes it's just really horrible. And you can tell I'm this poor sleep deprived mum who's been up all night baking birthday cakes and doing stuff, but can't really enjoy it because I'm so exhausted.
You mentioned, just earlier that, sometimes, you go your whole day without thinking about it.
Yeah.
But how, in my mind, when I hear your story here, I'm thinking, how's that possible if you're that tired?
Yeah. Well, what I mean is like not dwelling on it. I
Hmm.
don't dwell on it because I don't have time. It's good that I'm busy. I think if you're not busy, you'd have a lot more time to dwell on it, you know? Like I'm
Hmm.
a homeschool mom. I'm very busy all day, which is really good. It keeps my mind off it, but like I'm aware of it. You can't not be aware that you're absolutely exhausted.
Yeah,
It's more of a physical ailment than a mental one, if that makes sense. It's like I wanted to be able to do more, but physically I can't because I'm absolutely exhausted.
exactly. Okay. All right. And by the way, have you ever, during this journey, like, have you ever had seen a sleep doctor or doctor in general?
I went to my GP, but like he was just, basically telling me to to look into a cave and, not focus on it and, offered me some pills and that kind of thing, which I didn't agree with. None of that would have helped anyway. I think he was just giving me a little bit of a band-aid.
Hmm. 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 Okay. Well, here's what I'm thinking, Tash. It's like, you, what happened a year ago sounds like, pretty typical, right? There's some type of stress that creates insomnia. In your case, like you had, you slept very little. You slept like almost nothing, right?
Yeah,
And then you you heard about like CBTi, like you
yeah,
heard, that, right? And then you went into, okay, I'm going to do this. And you had, you saw some improvement, like some steps in the right direction.
yeah,
And then it sounds like then at some point, you were noticing like, I'm doing a little bit better, but
yeah,
not as well as I would like to do. And
yeah,
then, you went into like, okay, I'm really going to push it, like spending even less time in bed. I'm going to follow everything that's been said. I could hear like how you really, really tried, right?
yeah,
And, and in fact, it sounds to me like ever since July of last year, you have been having like kind of a sleep window. You're doing stimulus control. You're
yeah,
trying not to
yeah,
focus on it. You're doing everything.
yeah.
And and I think that, to me, that's it. I think that is why it never, you're not getting towards, you're not getting from a place where you had a little bit of improvement towards like,
Yeah,
okay, now I'm actually seeing more improvement.
yeah.
you know does that make sense at all?
So what? No, not really. Sorry.
I'm glad you said that. I'm super glad. Okay. I guess what I'm saying is that, I think it was helpful for you in the beginning to say like,
Yeah,
okay, got it. I'm learning about insomnia. I'm learning the 3P module. I understand what my perpetuating factor is, my precipitate. I understand all that. I'm going to spend less time in bed. That got you to a place where you were starting to sleep a little bit from like
yeah,
a point where you didn't sleep at all, right? And then, but you never made any real progress since then, you know?
no,
and you're telling a story of like, but I never gave up.
yeah,
I actually pushed myself further. I did even more of the things that, you always hear you should do.
yeah,
And I think that is the reason why you actually, paradoxically, like, your ability to really, you know your ability to like stay with it, stick with it, try even harder, I
Yeah.
think is the reason why you actually didn't see more improvement.
Okay. It's insane, isn't it? So what do I do? This is the thing. Like, do I like? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I have something very specific, and uh, I think you need a sleep detox.
okay,
Meaning, I know you're kind of like you're sharing that I consciously don't try to even think about sleep, which is
yeah,
I think actually it's one of those really tricky things, which is how do you make yourself not think about something? Then you're thinking about
yeah,
it, like it's really hard.
yeah,
But the first thing that comes to mind is this one: like you have been on some type of sleep window for almost a
yeah.
year.
Uh-huh.
I think you should for at least like give yourself a couple of weeks where you just completely abandon that.
Okay.
You know, Uh, don't even try to push yourself to stay up. Just
Yeah,
you know, just abandon the whole thing. Just abandon the
yeah,
sleep window. And if you wake up and you said like I don't feel stressed in bed, then don't get out of bed. Just stay in bed. Don't try to think of it as stimulus control. Like I think you need a real serious complete sleep detox.
yeah,
And I definitely think like, and I stressed this earlier, but nothing is medical advice, good you talk to your doctor,
yeah,
etc. But I do think you have some lingering, sneaky, stealth style hyperarousal that is still there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's the diligence of being a mum. Sometimes, like how mum's like on top of everything. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's like you're
yeah.
watching everything and stuff. And it's just something, it's the weirdest thing. It's something you just cannot control. It's very frustrating because I'm willing to be diligent and do whatever it is, even to the point of just sitting there like a zombie on the couch. But yeah, it's so debilitating, eh? It's unbelievable.
It sounds to me, and we didn't even specifically talk about it because I think you already understand the 3P model and all that, but
Yeah.
it sounds to me like you have you said like I can't even control it. There's no control. It sounds like you are a person who are I'm guessing you have an ability to function at a very high level, control a lot of things,
Yeah, yeah.
which I
Yes, I
think
think,
in which is why
yeah,
you
that would
probably
be,
you can juggle three kids and all the activities they need to do, etc., which is
yes,
fantastic. But so
yes.
with sleep, it's like you've heard me say this probably 10,000 times, but with sleep is like that ability to control things in others aspects of
Yeah,
life backfires badly when it comes to sleep.
yeah, I know. I've heard you say that, and it's 100% true. Yeah, yeah. So you can be super diligent and everything, but not with sleep. Yeah. But I do think that when people say that insomnia can't come back, I think it can, because it's just like being on a diet and losing a certain amount of weight. There's always like a temptation to
Hmm.
eat more and put on weight. Do you know what I mean? After you've
Yeah,
originally
yeah,
lost it, I
yeah.
think you have the ability to, like get to that point where you're sleeping beautifully, but the temptation comes back again, if that makes sense.
Mm,
It does come back. Uh, and it's how you respond to it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to eat those donuts. I've learned to just let that go.
right.
But that, with a personality of wanting to control things and have things in order or be diligent about it, it can come back. Do you know what I mean? Like, because you could have a stressful event. It's almost like when someone tells you, I don't mean this in a weird way, but when someone explains to you the first time you have sex that that will change everything. It's going to change your relationship. It's going to change the way you see things. It's the same thing. Like, once your eyes get opened to understanding insomnia and you really experience it, you can't kind of go back. Your eyes have been open to all of these ways of thinking, and you have to exercise self-control to not think that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 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 totally. I think
Yeah,
I've never heard
yeah.
that example before,
I
but
know
I
that sounds
totally
weird,
get
but
it. And
sorry,
and
I
I
don't mean it
wanna
in a weird way.
and I wanna just sneak this one in there, Tash, and then please continue. But that's what I think about almost when insomnia can be almost like PTSD. You had this traumatic event, And then,
Yeah.
so many things can remind you of that trauma, and just the whole thing just kind of comes back. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a little bit, but sorry, continue. And then I have some more thoughts on that one, but do continue.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like, what I'm saying about sex is that like you have a kiss and it stops at that point. But then like once you become an adult and you enter into those kind of relationships, it always goes further. Do you know what I'm saying? And so with
Yes.
insomnia, when you actually experience it, your mind gets open to all these ways of thinking. Before, I never even thought about going to the couch. I
Mm,
never thought about the stupid light in your eyes. I never thought
exactly.
about these things. My eyes have been open to this different way of thinking. And once they're open to that way of thinking, you have a little bit of a predisposition again, a temptation in the future to kind of entertain those things, those ways of thinking. Whereas my husband wouldn't think any of that kind of way because he hasn't kind of been down that path.
Right.
Once you have, there's such a temptation to entertain and go, oh, for goodness sakes, was it the dark chocolate I had at 10 o'clock at night? Was it the caffeine in that? Was it, you know what I mean? Because
Exactly.
you so desperately want to sleep that you can entertain many of those ways of thinking. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because I just never thought this way before. I never thought this way about anything. And then when it got explained to me, all of these different things that it could be, it's just like, oh, what is it? Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
And so now I'm being told it's me following all of those things. And so don't do any of those things. It's insane.
Oh yeah, right. So okay, so the first did you initially come across, I'm guessing you did because that's what almost everyone does. You come across all this like, oh, it could be chocolate, too much protein, eating too much, all
Yes.
that stuff, right?
Yes, and it's exhausting. It's so exhausting because when you, especially people who have insomnia where you're sleeping 0 to 2 hours of sleep, it's a different ball game to someone who's having. When I hear some people saying I've only had 5 hours sleep, I'm just like, wow, that's my goal at the moment. That's my goal. And I'm like, where are all the people who are having 0 to 2 hours sleep? Because your mental capacity is on a completely different playing field. It's like you're desperate, like you are so desperate for sleep. It's insane. And you have responsibilities. A person who doesn't have as many responsibilities probably finds it way easier to go to sleep. Someone who's got to get up to their baby in the morning, they can't eliminate that need. Do you know what I mean? You
That's
can't eliminate
true.
it. You've got to do these
Oh,
things. So
so you have
one
how?
person can recover faster than another because of those things.
Oh, you still have? Do you still have? If you don't mind sharing, but do you still have small kids?
Yeah, I have 3 kids. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so the need is there. I can't eliminate that. Whereas someone else may recover faster because they don't even have children. So that's one massive thing that you can just chop off. There is pressure that's there that you can't remove.
That I completely understand that one, because if you have a small child that you don't know when they're going to wake up at all, that adds what I'm gonna say 100% true external factor for uncontrollability. That is very true.
Yeah. And I'm a homeschool mum, so I have to teach my kids. I have to be alert.
Mm,
I have to know what I'm doing. I have to prepare. And then I have to drive them places. So, like, they're all things that I can't remove. So, that's why I've tried to be so diligent about not being diligent.
right. Yeah,
I'm just like, oh,
exactly.
far out.
But you were like, I'm guessing you were a homeschool mom even before July last year.
Yeah. Yes, for
Mhm.
years.
For years, yeah. So what was I gonna say? And I know, I'm saying this mainly for other people that will hear this. I think, you already know this, Tash, but you know, when you try to, you've kind of had that insight that, okay, maybe try like focusing on sleep, trying not to sleep, etc., is a problem. So I'm going to
Yeah.
try not to focus on
Yeah.
it. Right. That
Yeah.
is, you've done that already, which is really
Yeah.
hard to do, because again, it's just like, how do I not think about something I don't want to think about? It's really tricky. So
Yeah.
it's the kind of often more doable thing is to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to let this other thing take so much space in my life that I don't even have time to not think about what I not want to think about. So
Yeah.
for somebody it would be like, you know, it could be anything that you enjoy doing that could take more space. But I hear
Yeah.
you saying like, I'm just so tired. How can I even do that?
Exactly. So I am busying myself with lots of things and, redirecting myself by, setting other goals. At least if I achieve other things, I'm not focusing on that. But at the same time, it's just like when you're literally physically exhausted and you cannot push through, you can't ignore it. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, you can say to someone, I'm really hungry, and then when you're on an island, right, and there's no food, that hunger is completely different to the hunger you have for just wanting some Cheetos. Like, it's completely different. It's the same with insomnia. Like, when you genuinely don't have enough sleep and it's really, really bad, your mind and your body goes into completely different place. Like, it is just like, that's why
Yeah.
people on deserted islands, start, I don't know, eating their toenails or whatever, because they're desperate.
I hear you
Because they're
say that.
desperate, and so you get to a point where you're just desperate for sleep. You're not on the same playing field as someone who's,
Right.
having a little bit of a restless sleep and missing out on 1 hour. It's different. It's so different.
But you do, I think, I mean, I'm sure you know this too, but I'm just, putting it out there for you and everybody, anyone else that hears that desperation for sleep, as you know, is really feeds into, not sleeping more.
Yeah.
And of course, when you haven't, it's kind of like a chicken and egg thing. You like, but how can I not be desperate for sleep if I literally
Yeah.
have slept almost nothing? That is
Yeah.
true. Like, that's unrefutably, like, how can you not be? But
Mhm.
then you also have to acknowledge that it is the desperation that then feeds into you not sleeping again. So I think it has to be something. It is like a spiral, Cal. It is like thinking
Yeah.
the spirals round and round and round, and you have to break the spiral. And you know the way you of course want to break the spiral is like, I want to get more sleep so I'm
Yeah.
not desperate to sleep. But that
Yes.
is often, that's very hard because you can't control sleep. So it
Yeah.
really, what I feel about it is, no matter how hard it is, breaking the spiral, it lies in working on trying not to want sleep so much.
Uh,
But in your
yeah.
case, again, Tash, I think, I think, you kind of pushed everything I say and Martin say and everything that we believe is true to a point
Yeah.
where it actually, maybe you kind of, I hate to say this because it sounds judgmental, but pushed,
No, that's all right.
you took it too far, or you kept going even when it kind of worked against you, if you will. So
Yeah.
I really think like something that you should consider is just like, I'm going to abandon this whole idea with a sleep window or getting out of bed or stimulus control and everything for a while, and just see how that goes.
Okay.
Complete abandonment.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll do that because, yeah, everything that you guys have said, I've definitely done. Yeah, it is really to the point where I'm sitting there with no sleep effort, just like a zombie. I, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, oh yeah, when we started talking, you talked about like how you're like a zombie. You're so physically tired, I think you said, or maybe is it more like physically, emotionally, or both kind of drained?
It's just like going through the motions, like go through the motions for an entire year of hopping out of bed and just
Mm,
sitting there. I think I've made a permanent indentation in the couch from sitting there
right.
for so long. Do you know what I
You're
mean?
right.
Um, yeah, you know what I mean? It's just like, oh, far out. Like, it's just, I guess it's just in your brain as well. I just hate doing this. It's like you'd have to be lying to say, oh, I can't wait to do an enjoyable activity at 3 in the morning. Like, that's a lie. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Um,
right.
and yeah, you can't like, but I do. I listen to podcasts and things like that, and I do the best I can with that situation.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
so when I say zombie, it's just like I'm not going to get upset if this doesn't, like, sitting, like hopping out of bed. There are times where I've hopped out of bed 5 times and I still haven't slept, and I've been sitting on the couch at like 5 a.m. And that's pretty upsetting. But I mean, it makes me feel like a zombie. Like, if I get upset about this, I'm going to perpetuate it. So I just don't have any emotion, because if I have emotion, it's going to make it worse. Do you know what I'm saying? So I've just got to keep going
Mm-hmm.
through the motions, because what someone's going to end up saying to me is, you've just got to keep going. So I'm aware of that. So I just keep doing it. But it's just like, when is this going to give? Like, and then I rejoice in the days so much when it does give, but then for no reason, it just will regress. So yeah, it's a little bit depleting.
Yeah, I think that you talked about how you can, it's like the diet, like you can do well for a while, but there's always the temptation, always the thought patterns and etc. I mean, and you probably heard me say this too, but the way I think of it is like you have this like internal like security system, like a threat monitoring system, and once it has identified a threat, then it can easily get like reactivated. And
Mm,
it could be for no particular reason. Like you slept good and you have a pretty good day, and then you don't think nothing of sleep, but subconsciously part of your brain is like, oh, you slept good for
yeah.
2 nights. Are you really going to sleep good a third night? Maybe not. And that
Mm,
threat monitor system is
mm,
activated again, and then you have a sleepless night again.
mm.
So what was I going to say? Yeah, and I think I often talk about like just I think when particularly when things people see like, okay, I'm doing a little bit better, a little bit, then it's just like, okay, keep going, like just keep going and don't
Yeah,
react to sleepless night. I think that works great when you have at least like a tendency towards like the progress thing. But
yeah,
in your case, Tash, like you've done the same thing more or
yeah.
less for like a year, and you're not seeing that things are getting better. So I think you have to change something.
Okay, so how do I do that? Just like, yeah, I don't know.
I think when
I
do you have to be up for to take care of your kids? Like what time do you have to
Unfor
be up?
yeah, unfortunately, 5:30.
Oh,
Ouch.
that is the time. Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
that's what I have to, because we do the paper out. Like, I take some of my kids to do a paper out, a paid paper out,
Hmm.
and yeah, you have to do that before school starts, so it's early.
Okay. So so that's that. Okay. And how about weekends?
Yeah, it's on weekends as well. But then, didn't
Oh.
you say that I have to get up at the same time every day?
I think that's very good for most people that have trouble sleeping. It's good to have a pretty consistent wake up time. But again, that can, let me put it this way. When you start working with someone, I think it's good to have, oftentimes when people have trouble sleeping, right, it's very chaotic, right? And
Yeah.
everything is like out of whack, right? So I think in the beginning, it is good to have pretty like robust, rigid rules. Like, okay, don't get up,
Okay.
like be strict about this and be strict about that. But then
Yeah.
as people start, okay, doing better, then it's like, okay, now you don't have to have much rules. And again, of course, when people are doing well, it's like, now you don't have to have any rules. Now, forget about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so I think for someone like yourself, like, a lot of, it's gotten to a point where a lot of these techniques that you learn, rules and things like that are probably backfiring. Uh,
Yeah.
so I think I would say, I would have said, just get up when you need to get up for obligations, and don't think of yourself as having to stay up till 11. Just like if you're tired earlier and if you want to go to bed. Like just do what just like don't have any rules. Just like completely forget about all the teachings for at least like a couple of weeks. Do is
Yeah.
complete like the sleep detox. And same
Okay.
thing, like if you wake up from sleep and you said that you're not particularly anxious in bed. I think this
No, not at all.
hopping in and out of bed at this point is probably not doing you any good. I think it's better to just stay in
Yeah.
bed.
Yeah, it feels like when I stay in bed, I have a sleep mask thing, just for light. It's not for, like, anything else. So it feels like it forces my eyes shut, but I don't feel like I'm sleeping sometimes. And so that's why I've kind of hopped out of bed too. I'm like, oh, well, if I'm lying here for hours, which I'm pretty confident I can be, um, then that a bad thing? Like, does it matter if you're lying there for hours, but you're relaxed?
No, that's in my opinion, it's not a problem at all. I think a lot of in a lot of like traditional teaching, they say, if you're not sleeping, then leave the bed, which I think can lead to a lot of problems. So I would say if somebody's frustrated in bed, then
Yeah,
then you can like start associating the bed with frustration. But if you're relaxed, then no problem laying
yeah.
in bed. Not at all. I don't think
Yeah.
it's a problem at all. Again, you got to change something.
Yeah, it's really just like someone's thrown rocks at, you know, a glass window and it's just shattered my entire way of sleeping. It's like the whole, I don't know, like just everything in my brain is just, I don't know what time to wake up. I don't know what time to go to bed. I mustn't even have a circadian rhythm or anything because I don't wake up at the same time ever. Like it's always like 3:30, 4, 5. There's never any consistency to anything. So
Well, I think
yeah,
that there's another opportunity for change, and you probably anticipate me asking this, but how do you know that you wake up at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m.?
well, well, because my husband, he does shift work and he, like, it's just the rhythms. You know how you, like, I can hear the neighbor leaving at a certain time every morning, just pinpointing
But
things.
so
And
you mean
because I'm
that,
so,
so what based on the time your neighbor
yeah,
leaves, you know what time it is,
a lot of sometimes, but when I hop out of bed and go to the couch, I have to put my phone on to listen to an audio thing.
and then you happen to see what
So
time it is.
the time is on there, yeah. So that sometimes that's there. Otherwise, I feel like turning the dim light on to read. It's like it's too dim to read,
Mm.
and then if you make it brighter, then it's just like a beacon kind of thing, and then that kind of tends to wake you up just because it's so bright in your eyes. So yeah, I kind of can estimate roughly, and because I've got so much time on my hands, you
Yeah,
notice all the cracks in the walls that need to be fixed. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're just so bored. So yeah, I'm not worried about the time. I don't think like the time phases me and I go, "Ooh, that's terrible. I've got like I don't that doesn't seem to affect me, you know. I actually feel excited that I've actually had an hour's sleep. So that the noticing of time, I don't think that affects me. I've done everything. I try not to look at it. I've tried not to look at the time just because I thought, oh, maybe that's the thing that's bothering me.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it
yeah.
doesn't make any difference. It
No,
doesn't make squat of difference.
I hear, I hear. Well, I think any particular questions, Tash, at this time?
Have you heard of anyone who's had it as bad as me? I mean, I don't know. I just feel like it's so long. And do you know of anyone else who's only having like 2 hours of sleep and just not improve? Like, I feel like I know people say don't compare yourself to other people, but I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
I'll say something. I'm sure you listen a lot to my channel,
Yeah,
so I know you heard me say this too. But
yeah,
I've for someone like myself who interacts with so many people with trouble sleeping, there are
yeah,
no surprises. There are no
yeah.
surprises. I heard people tell me that they've had minimal sleep for decades and for
Uh,
like that. But and then of course, like people who hear this will say, oh my god, that's going to be me. But I truly believe, I 100% believe that it is always driven by either the fear of losing sleep, which you seem not to have that. But if it's not that, then it's like the attention towards sleep, and
yeah.
I understand your point here that if you're so exhausted because you sleep so
Hmm.
little, how can you not think about sleep? I get it,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
then still, I think a lot of things you mentioned, for example, how you the light will wake me up. That's a little bit of a like you're afraid of losing sleep a little bit. You want to sleep more, and I think to me, there's no mystery at all. I think there is lingering hyperarousal. I think there is that threat monitoring thing going on, and I think you will do well. I think you'll do really well if you just take steps towards like less rules, change the things you've been doing,
Yeah.
and I think you'll do really
Do
well,
you
Tash.
think that hyperarousal can just be lingering there without directly thinking about? Because there's a group of people you probably address all the time who are directly, you know, researching it and doing all these kinds of things. And I'm not in that group of person anymore, but you can have that lingering thing there, um, like in your brain. Is that what you mean?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's again that safety mechanism in your brain. Like it's there. It's like it's wondering
Like it's
like,
been
am I going to
triggered.
sleep?
It's been
What's going to?
triggered.
It's
Yeah.
triggered. Yeah, and it
Yeah. And it's sensitive to it.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think again, like for you, Tash, anybody else there, this is not medical advice. I'm just sharing my thoughts here, but I think what else can cause someone to have what you're having? What other
Yeah.
than hyperarousal can cause that?
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, it can't be anything else, can it? I mean, otherwise I'd be dead by now, wouldn't I?
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're thinking about like SFI and FIO, people think about like that. That's not even insomnia. You know, that's
Yeah, yeah, I know.
completely different. But what most people think about is like, am I having a low, serotonin levels or selenium levels, or is it my magnesium? Is it my hypothyroidism? Is it this and that? And
Yeah.
in my world, the only thing that can cause somebody to just week after week, month after month, just like I
Mhm.
takes me hours to fall asleep. I'm up for hours at night. Nothing I do
Yeah.
helps. It's hyperarousal.
Yeah. Far out. It's doing its job, isn't it?
Right,
It
you
knows
can
how to
put
do
it
its
that way.
job. Far out. Oh my goodness. Far out.
Very good, very strong safety system for sure.
Yes, that's right. I'd be great in the army, wouldn't I?
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, it's nice to hear you laugh, and I think uh, just consider everything we talked about, and stay in touch. And if questions come up, it would be great to talk again in a couple of months or something like that, and we can see how things are going.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate your time. Yeah. Hopefully, I'll change things up and yeah, again, and yeah, try to watch any of those sneaky ways of thinking.
We'll
It's so
see.
hard when you're desperate, though. It
I
really
hear
is.
it. Totally hear it. Well, again, Tash, thanks for coming on, and we'll stay in touch.
Have a great day.
Okay.
Thanks so
Bye
much.
bye.
Bye.